Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Fabriano Artistico hot pressed watercolour paper in the 300 weight, which I've been drawing this lovely pheasant gentleman on. Speaking of pheasant gentleman, I have a whole tutorial series in real time over on Patreon of this guy. You can subscribe to Patreon for as little as $5 per month and you gain access to over 75 videos in real time of drawing techniques and tips, both in pet portraits and wildlife. So I'll pop the link in the description and as a card up above if you want to pop over and view those tutorials over there. First off, let me talk about my experience with using this Fabriano 300 paper when drawing this little pheasant here. I initially laid down the graphite outline. I just used a regular 2B pencil to transfer the outline, and when I was erasing the outline from the paper when I was adding the colour on top, I found that it erased really well. It didn't leave hardly any of the graphite on there, especially when I used a little bit of a putty rubber as well on there. The only thing that did occur with this paper when laying down the graphite outline is if I pushed a little bit too hard, I found that it indented the paper, and this was a similar thing that I found when I was using the Strathmore Bristol board vellum paper. I found that that did the same, and it might just be on thicker paper that I just need to push a little bit lighter with my graphite pencil when laying down that initial outline. But I found it a little bit annoying because I got on the finished drawing, I've got a little bit of line showing through, which isn't really what I wanted on the final piece. One thing that I found when drawing this pheasant especially is that when I was laying down all of those lovely dark colours that you can see on the neck and the face of the pheasant, I found that after I'd left it for a couple of days, I had to go back over those dark parts to really darken them up, because I don't know why, but the colour was lifting from the paper. It was going really faded. It was going a really light shade of grey. So I had to go back over with the dark sepia and even a little bit of black pencil, which I hardly ever use in any of my drawings. I had to go back over it to really darken it up. Otherwise it was just getting lighter and lighter, and I didn't want to end up with a big grey patch when that area on the reference photo and on my drawing was supposed to be really dark. And I found that after I'd finished the piece, I had to go back over all of the dark parts of the feathers and really darken those up as well. I don't know why that was. Perhaps it's just one of those weird batches of Fabriano that's going around that is just having these few issues. But I just found it really annoying that I had to go back over and do that, because usually once I finish an area on a portrait, I don't really want to go back over and have to redarken it all the time. After I'd added a little bit of fixative and then gone over and layered again with the dark sepia and a little bit of black pencil, I found that the colour stuck a little bit more, so perhaps it just needed a little extra layer of fixative to help that pencil stay true to its colour. Layering and everything on the portrait of the pheasant I found really easy. The paper could really take a lot of layers, and that's what I'm going to show you now. I've got a little comparison between 3 different types of pencils, and then I've got 3 different techniques of using the pencil and everything. So let's jump into that. So what we have here are just a few different boxes. I'm going to be testing some layering, some burnishing and some blending. I'm also going to be testing 3 different types of pencils on this. So I'm going to use the Polychromos, the Luminance and the Pablo pencils. So I'm going to test out 3 different types of layering, 2 different types of burnishing, and I'm going to blend in 2 different methods as well. All of the materials and everything that I have used are in the description below, and also there are links to where you can find and buy any of these materials should you wish to. So the first thing that I've done is using the first pencil, which is a Faber-Castell Polychromos. I've just laid down a light layer using very light pressure onto the pencil, just layering 2 layers just to see how it goes down initially on this paper, and it really goes down quite well. You get a nice even coverage even with really light pressure, so I was really happy with that. I've then gone over and done a second little swatch, and I've added as many layers as I could just using the same pencil there, and you can see the saturation of the colour is quite deep, and I managed to get, I think it was about 8 layers I tried in total on that so far. Then I've done exactly the same 2 swatches with the Luminance, and then exactly the same ones with the Pablo pencils as well. The Luminance went down as easily as the Polychromos did. The Pablos I found weren't quite as vibrant on this paper. They just seemed a little dull in comparison to the Polychromos and the Luminance. I've then done a third little swatch where I've layered 2 layers of red, then 2 layers of white, and then red and white again, and then just seen how they layer and blend together that way, just using a separate colour. I've then gone over the top and added a few little white lines to see, after all of those layers that I've added, whether you can actually get some of those white fine lines on top, which is what I struggle with a lot on the lighter weight of the paper. So on the £140 Fabriano paper, I really struggled to get fine white lines on top of multiple layers. So I've moved on to burnishing, and I've just got 2 swatches. The first swatch I burnish with the coloured pencil itself, and then the second swatch I burnish with a Derwent burnishing pencil, and that's like a really hard lead in there. It's just to see the difference in the burnishing technique, and then again to see if I can add those white fine lines on top of that once I've really ground in the tooth of that paper. And the Polychromos worked really well. Again, the same with the Luminance. I managed to get a really good burnish on both of those, and then I managed to add the white on top of that. The white came out a little better with the Polychromos rather than the Luminance, and the white really came out on the Pablos as well. The Pablos burnished a lot easier on this paper than the Luminance. So moving on to blending, and for blending on this paper I'm just trying out first of all the Zestit pencil blend on the left hand swatch, and then I'm using the Derwent blend pen on the right hand swatch, and I'm just seeing how the paper handles a liquid blender, mainly in the Zestit, and this paper takes Zestit really well. I can go over multiple times with the Zestit. I have tried this out on a separate piece as well where I've used Zestit to blend, and it comes out really well. I thought I'd try the Derwent pen blender, and that works just as well, if not maybe better than the Zestit on this paper. I think because the paper's so thick, it can really take a lot of liquid and a lot of layers, so that's what I was really trying to test out with this, whether the paper could absorb all of that liquid from the Zestit and then the pen blender. Both methods of blending with a solvent worked really well on this paper. I was really happy with the results I could achieve, and then I worked back over each of the swatches with a little bit of the white pencil, and I was really happy with how that came out on top of that as well. So I'm just going to go through a few of the pros and cons of this paper. First of all, I really like that this paper is so thick. It feels really luxurious in my hand, and when I'm using it on my drawing table. It doesn't crease as easily as the lighter weight paper, so that I would find that when I had the £140 paper it would crease really easily, whereas this one's a lot thicker and heavier in weight, so it doesn't really crease as easily. The second pro of this paper is that it does hold a lot of layers, and I'm talking a lot. You can really punish this paper and it will still take layers. Like, I could add probably 15 or more layers and I'd still have some tooth left. It is really good in comparison to the £140. Again, that one can't take as many layers, and I think that is because of how thin it is. I think the thicker the paper, the more layers it can actually hold. When testing this, I found that it is good for both wax and oil-based pencils. Both of them work really well on this paper. You can't really see much of a difference. Like with the Pablo, it came out a little less vibrant than the Luminance and the Polychromos, but that doesn't really bother me. You can build up the luminosity in the colour just by adding multiple layers. When you use a burnisher or a burnishing technique on this paper, it handles really well. You can always add more layers on top, as you saw in the little swatches. I could add little white lines on top of the little swatches, so even if you've burnished and really damaged the tooth of the paper in that respect, you can always add more over it. This paper is really forgiving when it comes to adding layers and just generally adding colour down on it. It's really easy to blend your pencils with a solvent blender, or if you don't use a solvent blender, it's really easy to add layers and blend with your coloured pencil, or even blend with a white pencil. As you saw when I was layering, I was adding that white pencil and just blending the colours a little bit. It's so easy to do that again because it's so forgiving when you're adding layers, and it is thicker, so it does hold liquid better than the thinner papers. It holds liquid a lot better than the Strathmore Bristol boards that I have trialled out as well. So on to some of the cons of this paper. There's not that many. I couldn't really think of many bad things to say about this paper apart from, one, it is more expensive than a lot of the papers that I have in my studio. It's a lot more expensive than the £140 paper, and that's purely because it's a heavier weight, it's a heavier gauge paper, so you're going to expect to pay a little bit more for the paper. It's not budget friendly, so if you do have a budget in mind and you want to stick to your budget, then this paper probably wouldn't be your friend. It wouldn't be the best paper to opt for. The second con for this is that it's not actually available in pad format that I've seen anywhere. If you've seen it in a pad format, I would love for you to link me to it because I would buy up a pad like that. The only weight of paper in a pad that I have seen is the £140. If it is available in pad format, then you can take this con right off the list, but from my search and from the sites that I use, I cannot find the £300 paper in pad format. The last con that I have for this paper is what I said at the very beginning when I was drawing the pheasant on here. The black colours really seem to absorb into the paper. You really have to wait a few days and then see if the colours are going to fade, and then if and when they do, you have to add a lot more dark layers on top to try and get some of those really dark areas back on whatever artwork you're creating. Overall, I think this paper is really great. Of course, I love Fabriano. I've exclusively used the £140 weight paper before, so I thought I would try the £300 weight, and I think I love it even more than the £140 weight, just because it's so forgiving with the layers. It feels so much more luxurious. It's just a good all-round paper. It's good for blending, it's good for burnishing, it handles colours well. The only bad thing about it really is that it is one of the more expensive papers out there on the market. So that's all I have for you guys on this paper. If you've liked this video, then please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a share around too to get some more viewers to the channel. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social media sites. I'm on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. If you have any suggestions on future tutorials or reviews or anything that you would like me to do for you guys, then please pop it down in the comments below. I'd like to hear your feedback and give back to the channel on what you guys would like to see. But that's it for now. I will see you in another video, guys, so take care and see you later.